And this, of course, is the famous Captain Clarke B, of either the United States of America or Ireland, depending on whose story of his background you believe, and news of whose exploits have reached us even this far from civilization. The adventurous Captain Clarke B, Daredevil inventor of the life-saving inflatable suit that you were introduced to just previously, who'd only a few months ago swum ashore on the west coast of Ireland in the middle of a storm, having already demonstrated his invention on the great rivers of the American continent, and now embarked on a promotional tour of the waterways of Europe. The charming Clarke B, who addresses the small crowd gathered on the muddy oyster-shell-strewn ground outside the inn the next morning after sending little Pete the innkeeper's son to half a dozen neighbouring villages in the hours before sunrise to announce his presence here and around, and about whom rumours are already spreading, chiefly that he may have spent the previous night in bed with either the innkeeper's wife or daughter or both, and this has gone a long way to winning us simple village folk over before he's even started his speech. 6 feet tall, not yet 40, and still handsome enough, with a weirdly high-pitched voice, "Ladies and gentlemen of this fine parish," is what he opens with, and the air is still cold enough that there's a crisp edge to it and a crunch to the mud under our feet too. "I have swum the mighty rivers of the Missouri and the Mississippi and the Rio Grande. I have crossed giant oceans and seen flying fish and whales breaching in the Pacific at dawn." Oohs and ahs from the crowd here. "I've navigated terrifying rapids and mighty cataracts, saved only by the efficacy of my patented life-preserving costume," pointing to the suit itself, which is standing up on a frame by his side, and to which we all nod knowingly. "And this last week alone I have single-handedly travelled the length of the Thames from its source to this place at the very edge of the sea." And he pauses here to let people realise that he's talking about them, about us, about our little village. I exchange glances with Susan, the vicar's daughter. A small warming cheer goes up. "And in 3 days," holding up a copy of the London paper, and with a picture of himself in it, retrospect probably a paid advertisement, "I am due to attempt a crossing of the treacherous English Channel and land upon the coast of France." A chorus of boos goes up at the mention of the historic enemy here, momentarily throwing the captain off his stride. Nevertheless, he rallies and embarks upon the section of his performance about how, although his insignificant life means nothing, if, through his scientific work, he might save the lives of others, fishermen, sailors, brave members of the Royal Navy, by the adoption of the technology contained within this suit, then all will not have been in vain. And asking us to think what we might say to our own various loved ones lost to the waves over the years, offered the chance to explain how we'd been given the opportunity to save others like them by dropping a coin into the hat, even now being passed around. Well, even my father, that sour old armbreaker, is reaching into his pocket by this point. Giant Pete, the innkeeper, is trying to push fistfuls of notes into the captain's hands, his daughter shyly smiling and towing the shingle, and no sign of the wife. And then comes the kicker. "But who among you might assist me on this adventure?" the captain shouts, and we all stop and turn and go, "What?" And then the captain's eyes fall on me, as was his plan all along, and he points me out, making sure everyone can see. "What about you, sir?" "Me? A strong young man to journey with me across the wild continent, to support me in my life-saving work and take the name of his village to the farthest corners of civilization, and paid a wage, of course." "Of course!" everyone shouts. And trapped, I look around, trying to spot my brother, and don't find his eyes anywhere. Meet instead the adoring gazes of some of my former classmates, the raised and sceptical eyebrow of Susan, the vicar's daughter. And then Giant Pete, the innkeeper, comes forward and throws his giant arms around me. "He accepts!" he shouts. "Of course he accepts!" And suddenly I'm being lifted and carried along by the hands of my friends and neighbours, past along the crowd and through the doors of the inn, where I am laid along the bar. And there's the innkeeper's wife now, with a definite glow about her, it must be said, and she's already drawing the first of the very many glasses of beer that will be poured down my throat that morning, and so is my fabulous, awful destiny sealed. When I come to hours later, I'm laid out in the middle of the marsh, my face in a bed of glasswort with dim memories of it being buried earlier in the warm bosoms of more than one of the women of the village, and my brother sitting on the cracked mud some yards from me with his bandaged arm laid across his knees. It's already late in the day, and the tide is coming in. "You're famous," he says. "That wasn't my intention," I answer. "But all the same, I'll send for you," I say, struggling to get up. Across the marsh, the water is advancing quickly. "As soon as I've enough money, I don't know any other solution to our situation. Let me come now. Look, it won't even be a year. You know I won't survive that long." "Children can survive anything. We both know that." He laughs darkly. And then he wipes his eyes, wipes his nose on his sleeve and sniffs. 1 year, he says. That's a promise now. 1 year is what I reply. But of course it doesn't turn out like that.